Well, I kind of changed the plan. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. We welded this brace in there, or Phil welded this brace in there to keep the front end from going too crazy. And then I've got this panel, which comes into here, which I'm going to have to drill this spot weld, which I did not mark. See I forgot how far that panel goes in there. I think it stops right about here, but I'm not sure. It's like it overlaps. It goes in behind here. Basically, all I want to do is replace this panel. This panel here looks okay. This one got kind of boogered up there. It's ripping and tearing, but we're going to drill. Go ahead and mark with the Sharpie all these spot welds once I get this off. All these, and then this is a brace here that comes over and then goes to about here, or about here. So you can see all the spot welds I got to drill. Some more spot welds in here, and then take this panel off. Everything in here looks pretty good. You can tell that one's just kind of rusty. And we've got that other panel, and we've got a fender and two panels that we can add on to here. Get that bar off there and drill all those spot weld and remove that panel and see what it takes to put one of those other panels in. Yeah, sounds like a plan. Let's see if we can get this done. See, there was a little bit of surface rust. I just knocked it down with actually a grinder. I hit it with one of these, like a Scotch-Brite pad, and then sprayed some of our rust converter on there, and we're gonna let that sit. I just knocked the scaly stuff down and then sprayed some rust. Our inner fender apron was sandwiched in between here, all the way down to there, and then sandwiched in between the fender and this piece. So getting those out, you're gonna have to do a little bit of damage to something. Even if you were to take this panel out, now you're behind your door jamb. So, you know, you try to do as least amount of damage as possible, but good thing it's just metal. You can hammer and dolly it, clamp everything, and then we'll just weld up our holes where we cut out the spot welds, and then weld up where we split it with our air hammer. And to get those apart, once I drilled a small pilot hole with a 1/8 drill bit so that the tip of our spot weld driller will go down in that hole and keep this thing centered. These are just little blares. You kind of go through those pretty quick, unfortunately. And then after that, I come back with an air hammer. One of these. Now this is a good one. You can buy cheaper ones, they work too. But I'm using this bit where it's kind of like, you kind of see where it's flat on one side and then tapered on the other. I keep the flat side on the part that I want to try to save, and it being wedges, it'll wedge its way in there and then push the panel that you're trying to get off that you don't care about, get it out of the way. Basically, you're splitting it and trying to create as little amount of damage to the panel you're trying to save as you can. So I don't know, that's kind of where we're at on that. I'm gonna let that sit for a little bit. I gotta run over to the paint store, grab some more spot weld cutters. Fortunately, I've drilled about 100 spot welds with this little guy. I've actually used 2 of these, so they're both getting pretty dull. I have to put a lot of pressure on them to get them to cut the metal, so that means it's time for a new one. So I'll run over there and grab that. By the time we get back, that should give that about 20-30 minutes to do what it's got to do. We'll neutralize it with some water, wipe it down, blow dry it so that the water doesn't continue to rust our bare metal, and then we'll prep the new panel, slide it in there, clamp it in place. Then we'll mark out where our holes are, where we want to drill holes through our spot welds. Panel sitting here about where it needs to be, but since this whole front end was kind of pushed up and smashed, you kind of see the evidence on this panel here where it was bent up and ripped. Sure that the distance from here to here is going to be the same. Now I have it on another video from a Bronco I did before, but instead of digging through that footage, I think that we're going to use a fender this is getting new fenders, and getting these from Tom's Off-Road. Part number 1918, which is a left-hand fender. Got it sitting over here. I thought maybe it'd be a good time to check it out. So I'm gonna unwrap this, throw it up here, and get a better look at what we have here. Guard on it. Is I'm going to set this fender, put the fender back on here, and take and look it over and make sure all my bolt holes and everything line up on this to my fender, and then also to the core support. So I'm not too sure about where this goes. So this is kind of a quick, easy way to get the distance right. But the problem we're running into is the fender, I believe, comes around here, so I have to clamp it here. I think I can clamp it out here. And if I have to, I can clamp it down here, which should still be enough to tell me if my holes and my fenders are going to line up, and that's how I'm going to figure out where my, whatever that's called, the fender skirt is going to be sitting back on here. I've got it bolted down here. These couple bolts. Got that hole, this hole, and this hole line up pretty good. I didn't do anything with this hole, but I can kind of move this around, so I'm not too worried about that. I almost need to take this panel here and slide it forward. We're pretty centered in this hole, but this hole here, I can kind of push the inside of that panel over a little bit if I need to. Looks like we need to come forward with our inner panel just a little tiny bit. That will dictate how far this panel from front to back, where it needs to sit. This thing went ahead and drilled a few spot weld holes. We'll come back and clamp this, make sure this is all clamped. Got a few along our inner fender well. Go ahead and weld all these holes up. Then at that time we'll come back and we'll hammer and dolly this over. This has got a couple holes in it, so we'll weld that in, and that should pretty much wrap up that skirt, curtain, or whatever you want to call it, for Traverse. We're running out of time today, so we'll get that welded up, ground down, and throw the fender back on it. So we got the inner skirting on this thing, welded in, ground down. Although I forgot to mention that I did spray some primer for bare metal that you can weld through. So it basically has a weld through copper rich primer, and then something in Spanish. Obviously got copper in it. That way you can weld through it. You could still primer the inside of your pinch welds where you're going to weld your two pieces of metal together. This just creates something you can weld through. So it's just a little extra protection, or they can do it in like door skins and stuff. Did spray a little bit on the back side of here. Wrapped up, we got it all drilled in. We had it on there. Last thing I think I mentioned was having this on there clamped together. Pulled the fender off, drilled a few holes along here and a few holes along here, so I could plug weld the inner fender to the outside. I'm gonna call this the fender skirt, or the inner skirt. I don't know what technical term for this is really. Where we beat the crap out of it here trying to get those things separated. We got it welded in on the inside, and then we gotta hit that with the grinder, but welded this in, knocked it down with a hard stone, and then went over it with 36 on a roll lock, and then just buzzed it down with 80. Basically we're buzzing it down with 80 so that our epoxy sealer will stick to it, okay? And then I think we're gonna end up probably spraying like a bed liner or something in there. I know we're going on the bottom and probably there and inside the fender wells. But for now, we got that side wrapped up. That pretty much wraps up for the day, and I'm gonna end the video here, and we'll tackle some more tomorrow. So if you like this video, this type of stuff, give this a like, a subscribe. Tune in on the next video for some more Bronco rust repair, and remember, get out there and create something today, even if it sucks. Peace.